Hello, we're going to teach you how to install the Brocade Vyatta controller version 1.1.1. We're going to refer to it as the BVC. This video is broken into several sections. Here you can actually hop to a specific section if you think you don't need to do another section, although we suggest you go through sequentially. The first step is to have a machine that the BVC 1.1.1 can run on. If you have a machine that meets those requirements, then skip ahead. If you don't have a machine that meets those requirements, click the link above and we'll take you to a video that'll teach you how to install a VM that will host the BVC. Now that you have a machine, you have to install the prerequisites. This requirement is for Java. We're going to need version 1.7.0 build 71. We're going to start typing in a URL here that's going to go direct to us area in Oracle that will take us to build 71. Once we get there, you'll see that we have two choices. There's a build 71 and a build 72. We want build 71. We have to accept the license and then pick the Linux x64 version. We want to save it, not open it. And once that's downloaded, we'll go ahead and close out our browser session. We'll open a terminal and we'll go to our downloads folder. The downloads folder, you can see the tar gzip file. We're going to actually unzip it and untar it. And that'll create a JDK 1.7.0 build 71. And then we're going to move that JDK over to the opt folder. So one thing that you want to check and see is your Java home environment variable set correctly? It probably isn't set at all. We could just set it right here, but instead we're actually going to set the environment variable in your PAM environment, your .pam_environment file. This ensures that every time you bring up a new console window or log in, it will actually get set. In order for that to take effect, we have to log out and log back in. Now when we open up the terminal and we echo the Java home variable, you'll see it is in fact set correctly. Now we can actually use that to call Java and get the version. The version is in fact 1.7.0 build 71. Next we're going to have to actually update apt-get, and once we've done that we want to install zip. We also want to install unzip. Following that we want to actually check and see if we have curl installed. We don't. So we'll go ahead and install curl. Finally, we'll use curl to actually go get a number of install scripts related to Node.js, which we'll need to install Node.js in a moment. Now we'll go ahead and install Node.js. For that, we're going to check and make sure that the version is 0.10.32 or greater. Then we're going to go ahead and install the OpenSSH server. Once that installs, we'll have all of the requirements for BVC 1.1.1. At this stage, it's a good idea to actually validate that the machine meets all the requirements for BVC 1.1.1. That's what we'll do in this section. First thing to check is, in fact, that we have the correct version of Ubuntu. So let's go ahead and do that. Yep, 14.04. Next, what we're going to do is check our memory. We have 5 gig, that's 1 gig less than the 6 for minimum, but we aren't going to be running in production, so it'll be okay. Next we check our disk space, it's 32 gig, which is the minimum. And finally what we're going to do is check the number of processors, which should be 4. Yep, it's 4, which is the minimum. Okay, so now we actually have a machine that meets the requirements. Let's ensure that we've hit all of the prerequisites as well. Okay, so the first thing to check is Java. So we'll make sure that the Java home is set. It is, and then we will actually use that to get the version of Java on the system. It should be version 1.7.0 build 71. It is. So then we're going to check and make sure zip and unzip are on the machine. The versions aren't as important here. These have been around forever. I doubt that we'll have a problem with the version. We just need them to be there. Curl will check and make sure it's on the system. Then we're going to check Node and its version. It needs to be 0.10.32 or greater. It is. And finally, OpenSSH server is on there. Hooray! We've actually got a machine and all the prerequisites installed. It's actually time to download BVC. Okay, so we're going to need to register to get our 60-day free trial. Just a name, an email, a company, and a country. That's it. And we'll click Submit. At that point, we'll accept the terms and conditions. Now, you have a number of files that you can download here. Certainly, you want the BVC 1.1.1 zip, as well as the BVC dependencies 1.1.1. After that, the rest are documents, but they're good documents, so I'd grab them as well. User guide, as well as the quick start. Okay, we've got the files. Let's go ahead and install BVC. So let's go to our downloads folder, and that should be where we downloaded all those files. You can see the red ones are the ones that we're going to be mostly interested in. We're going to actually create a directory over in opt BVC. That's sudo. And then we're going to change the ownership to ourselves of it. Then we're going to unzip the BVC 1.1 as well as the BVC dependencies into that folder, so that now opt BVC will now contain both sets of files from those. Now all the files are in place, we can do the install. Just so you know, I've sped this up a little bit. It takes a bit longer than is shown here. But once the install is done, you've got BVC installed. Okay, so now let's validate that BVC is in fact installed. The installer actually starts the BVC running. We're just going to validate that it is in fact running by using PS and finding the process. Yep, there it is. The next thing we're going to do is actually an IF config, and we're going to get our IP address. This is going to be important because the next step is to open a browser and browse to a web server that's running on this computer. So let's browse to that web server that's running on this computer. We're going to paste in the IP address and then port 9000, which is where it's listening. And sure enough, there's the login screen for the BVC. We'll do admin. We'll log in, and there's the GUI. The topology and nodes are kind of dull. We don't have any actual switches connected. The Yang UI is updating. It takes a couple minutes. Over on settings, we can see the controller's IP, and we can click on the API dock browser. This is cool. This is a Swagger interface. As a developer, you're going to be there quite a bit. Here on the Yang, we can actually wait a little while. I sped that up a bit. And you can see that these are, in fact, the Yang modules that have been detected. Again, there'll be more here once we actually connect devices, and the topology and nodes will be filled in. So we've proven that the BVC is running, but is it always running? How do we stop and start it? So the BVC is actually not always running. When you restart your computer, it doesn't restart. Now we've used PS here to prove that it is running right now. We're going to go ahead and stop it by going to opt BVC bin stop. That usually takes a bit longer. I sped it up for the video in the order of minutes. Now we're going to check, sure enough, it is in fact stopped. Now we're going to go opt BVC bin start to start it. You'll need to do this every time you start your computer unless you change something. I should note that the start doesn't, although the start command returns immediately, it doesn't actually start. Here I'm proving that by browsing to the GUI, and in fact we get an unable to log in. That's because it hasn't finished starting yet, and we can prove that to ourselves by tailing the controller log, carafe log. And if we watch, this is sped up as well. It'll go through a number of logs, but what we're looking for is netconf connector initialized. Once that happens, we can actually log in and get into the BVC. Okay, you've got BVC running. You know how to stop it. You know how to start it. So what's next? Well, here's some ideas. You can click any of the links above on this screen. You can check out our wiki, where we'll be putting more information about what to do with the BVC. You can subscribe to this blog's RSS feed, where we'll be blogging about new ideas of what to do with the BVC. You can send me an email if you want specific ideas talked about in future blogs. And then if you have issues, please put comments below this blog and I will respond to them. Hey, thanks very much for listening. Hope it helps.